The city Isaac Grant calls home is one of contrasts. The downtown area gleams with modern high-rises and chic cafes, symbols of prosperity. But away from the bustling core, in neighborhoods largely inhabited by communities of color and immigrant families, the atmosphere is different. These neighborhoods are vibrant and rich in culture, yet they face daily reminders of struggle. Streets lined with small businesses run by families, modest apartments, and aging buildings speak to the resilience of people who have long fought for a place in a city that often overlooks them. Isaac has lived here for decades, deeply woven into the community fabric. As a city council member, he's championed issues that impact the underrepresented, working tirelessly to advocate for affordable housing, fair wages, and educational resources. But lately, his focus has turned to something more urgent: police reform. Over the years, he's witnessed countless incidents of racial profiling, stories shared in hushed voices within his community. Friends and neighbors have recounted their run-ins with law enforcement, each story carrying the weight of mistrust and fear. Isaac's position gives him a voice, a platform, and he's determined to use it to drive change. This particular morning, Isaac feels a sense of purpose as he walks to the local park. He's organized a public meeting to discuss police reform and address the injustices that have plagued his community for too long. It's early, but people are already gathering under the trees, setting up chairs in small groups, their conversations animated. There's a palpable energy in the air, a sense of anticipation that maybe, just maybe, things could start to change. Isaac knows it won't be easy. Even getting people to attend has required patience and persuasion. The community has been let down so often that many hesitate to believe in promises of reform. But seeing them here, gathered in quiet solidarity, Isaac feels a renewed commitment to the cause. As the meeting begins, Isaac takes a moment to survey the crowd. He sees familiar faces, mothers with children in tow, elders who've lived here since before he was born, and young adults who have grown up watching their parents and neighbors fight just to survive in this city. Isaac's heart swells with pride. These are his people, the community he has dedicated his life to uplifting. He begins to speak, his voice steady but full of emotion. He talks about the need for change, not just in policies but in the attitudes that fuel discrimination. He speaks of accountability, of creating a city where people don't have to fear those sworn to protect them. This isn't just about laws, he says, his voice carrying over the murmurs of the crowd. It's about respect. It's about dignity. We all deserve to feel safe and valued in our own neighborhoods. His words resonate deeply with those gathered. Heads nod, hands clap in agreement, and murmurs of support ripple through the crowd. Isaac's passion is infectious, and for the first time in a long while, hope begins to stir among them. Then from across the park, a piercing sound interrupts the moment. A police siren. Heads turn, and an uneasy silence falls over the crowd as a squad car pulls up nearby. The door swings open, and out steps Officer Brian Roberts, a tall, imposing figure in uniform. Isaac's heart sinks. He knows of Brian's reputation, the numerous complaints against him, all dismissed by the department. Brian has been a symbol of the very issue they're here to address, a pattern of unchecked power and prejudice within the police force. Unaware of Isaac's counsel position, Brian approaches the gathering with a hardened gaze, assessing the people as if they're suspects rather than citizens. He strides forward, his hand resting near his holstered weapon, his face set in a look of irritation. "Who's in charge here?" Brian's voice cuts through the air, his tone laced with authority. Isaac steps forward calmly, his shoulders squared. "I'm Isaac Grant," he replies, extending a hand in greeting. "I organized this meeting to discuss community concerns." Brian barely glances at Isaac's hand before ignoring it entirely. "This is an unlawful assembly," he declares flatly, raising his voice for everyone to hear. "You all need to clear out, now." Isaac's stomach twists with anger, but he maintains his composure. "Officer, this is a peaceful meeting. We're not causing any disturbance," he says, his voice measured but firm. "We have a right to be here." But Brian isn't interested in explanations. He stares at Isaac with a condescending smirk. "I don't care what you think this is," he retorts, crossing his arms. "I said disperse, or I'll have to start handing out citations." A ripple of anxiety spreads through the crowd. Isaac can see the worry in their faces. the memories of past encounters with law enforcement playing out in their eyes. Many of them have faced similar situations before, situations where their rights were ignored simply because of who they were and where they lived. He knows that if he gives in now, it will only reinforce the fear that's kept his community silent for so long. Taking a deep breath, Isaac addresses Brian directly, his tone unwavering. Officer Roberts, we're gathered here to discuss concerns that affect our lives. We're exercising our right to peaceful assembly. This is a public park, and we have every right to be here. The crowd seems to draw strength from his words, and a few voices call out in agreement, emboldened by Isaac's stance. But Brian's expression hardens, a flash of anger in his eyes. "I'm not going to ask again," he snaps, stepping closer. "You're all trespassing. I don't care who you think you are." Isaac feels a surge of frustration, but he knows he can't let it show. The people around him are watching, waiting to see how he'll respond. He glances around, meeting their gazes, and sees the fear and uncertainty in their faces. Many of them are tired of being overlooked, tired of being afraid. He realizes that this moment is bigger than him. It's about showing his community that they can stand up for themselves, even when faced with intimidation. Slowly, he raises his voice, addressing both Brian and the crowd. "We're not trespassing, and we're not breaking any laws," he says, his tone calm but resolute. "We have a right to be heard, and we won't be silenced." The crowd stirs, their energy shifting from fear to a quiet determination. Some of them nod, whispering words of encouragement to each other. For the first time, they see someone standing up to the authority that has long overshadowed their lives. Isaac's defiance sparks a sense of solidarity, a realization that they too have power in their numbers. Brian, however, is unfazed. His eyes narrow, and his posture grows more rigid. "Last warning," he says, his voice cold. "If you don't disperse, I'll start making arrests." Isaac holds his ground, aware that this could escalate but unwilling to back down. He can feel the weight of his community's trust resting on his shoulders, and he knows that his response here will set the tone for whatever comes next. Behind him, a few people take out their phones, beginning to record the interaction, capturing every word, every look. Brian notices this and stiffens, but he doesn't back down. Tension fills the air, thick and almost tangible. Isaac knows that a single wrong move could change everything. He meets Brian's gaze, a silent battle of wills playing out between them. Around him, the crowd holds its breath, waiting to see who will yield. In that moment, Isaac understands that this isn't just a meeting. It's the beginning of a movement. His community is watching, ready to stand with him, and he's ready to lead them, no matter the cost. As Isaac stands firm in front of Officer Brian Roberts, the crowd around him stirs, their murmurings growing louder. There's an energy here that wasn't present just moments ago, a gradual realization that this gathering may be more significant than anyone had anticipated. People are watching Isaac, their faces a mix of apprehension and hope, emboldened by his refusal to yield. It's as though his courage has awakened something dormant in them, a quiet strength that had long been stifled by fear and resignation. One by one, voices begin to rise in support of Isaac, pushing back against Brian's aggressive commands. "He's our councilman," someone calls out, reminding Brian and the crowd of Isaac's official role in the community. Another voice chimes in, louder this time, echoing the sentiment. "You can't treat him like this. He's here for us." Brian's expression flickers with brief surprise, his stern demeanor momentarily breaking. He hadn't realized who Isaac was, hadn't expected that a city council member would be part of this gathering, let alone leading it. But instead of backing down, Brian doubles down, masking his discomfort with a rigid stance and an even sharper tone. "I don't care if you're a councilman or not," Brian sneers, directing his words squarely at Isaac. "This is an unlawful assembly, and I'm not asking again. Everyone needs to leave. Now." The crowd's energy intensifies, shifting from quiet observation to active resistance. There's a palpable tension in the air, a sense that something bigger is unfolding, a shared feeling that this confrontation is about more than just today's gathering. It's about years of being silenced, overlooked, and mistreated. The people in the crowd begin to see Isaac not only as their councilman, but as a symbol of their own struggle for respect and justice. At the front of the crowd, Jamal Harris steps forward, his expression a mix of anger and frustration. He's a young black man, tall and lean, with a presence that commands attention. Jamal has a history with the police, one marred by repeated harassment, unjust stops, and endless suspicion cast on him simply because of who he is. The sight of Brian standing there, dismissing their rights with a sneer, stirs something in Jamal that he can barely contain. Years of pent-up anger and hurt bubble to the surface, and without thinking, he takes a step toward Brian, his fist clenched. "This is wrong," Jamal shouts, his voice strong and defiant. "We have a right to be here. You can't just come in and push us around." The crowd murmurs in agreement, and a few people clap, their encouragement giving Jamal a surge of confidence. For them, Jamal's anger is familiar. It reflects their own frustrations, their own silent grievances that have been forced down time and again. Isaac, however, senses the danger in this moment. He knows how quickly anger can escalate into something uncontrollable, especially in a crowd already on edge. Gently but firmly, he steps between Jamal and Brian, placing a calming hand on Jamal's shoulder. "Jamal," he says, his voice steady, "I understand. Believe me, I do. But we can't let anger take over. That's what they're waiting for, a reason to paint us as the problem." Jamal meets Isaac's gaze, his expression torn. He respects Isaac, knows that the councilman is fighting for them, but the years of hurt and resentment are hard to suppress. For a moment, he seems as though he might ignore Isaac's plea. But then, with a reluctant nod, he steps back, his jaw clenched and eyes blazing. As Isaac calms Jamal, more bystanders begin to pull out their phones, recording the interaction. The crowd is shifting, growing more unified, their collective frustration focused on Brian's refusal to listen. Every voice that speaks up, every phone raised, adds weight to the scene unfolding, as if each person is silently declaring that they will no longer stand by in silence. Brian notices the cameras pointed at him, his jaw tightening as he feels the scrutiny. But instead of backing down, he becomes even more defensive, his posture rigid and unyielding. "Put those phones away," he barks, gesturing angrily at the bystanders filming him. "This is official police business." But his demand only seems to embolden the crowd further. More people lift their phones, capturing every word, every expression. For them, these recordings are proof of their mistreatment, of the dismissal and disrespect they've faced for years. The people in the crowd know these videos might be their only way of making sure their voices are heard. Isaac takes a steadying breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle on his shoulders. He realizes that this situation has become a test of wills, a standoff that could define the community's relationship with authority for years to come. The crowd is looking to him, trusting him to lead, to speak for them. He knows he has to tread carefully, that a single wrong word or action could unravel everything he's fought for. Addressing both the crowd and Brian, Isaac raises his voice, calm but resolute. "We're here to have a peaceful discussion, Officer Roberts. We're not breaking any laws and we're not causing harm. We're simply exercising our right to gather and talk about the issues that matter to us." His words are measured, carrying both a quiet defiance and an appeal to reason. The crowd listens intently, their tension easing slightly as they draw strength from Isaac's composure. They can see that he isn't afraid, that he's standing up not just for himself but for all of them. The sense of unity grows, a shared understanding that they have each other's backs, that together they are strong. Brian, however, remains unfazed. "This is your last warning," he says, his tone laced with barely concealed frustration. "If you don't leave, I'll be forced to take further action." Isaac meets Brian's gaze, his expression unwavering. "We're not going anywhere, officer," he replies calmly. "We're here for a reason, and we're not going to be silenced." His words hang in the air, a declaration of resilience that resonates deeply with the crowd. Around him, people begin murmuring in agreement, their voices growing louder, more confident. They see in Isaac someone willing to stand up to authority, someone unafraid to challenge those who have oppressed them. It's a feeling they've longed for, a sense of empowerment that gives them the courage to stand tall, to let their voices be heard. Brian's frustration is evident, his control slipping as he realizes that the crowd isn't backing down. He shifts his weight, glancing around at the sea of faces staring back at him. each one a reminder that his authority isn't as absolute as he'd like to believe. For a brief moment, he seems uncertain, his usual confidence wavering under the scrutiny of the crowd. The tension in the air is almost palpable, a silent standoff between Brian and the people he's tried to silence. Isaac feels the weight of the crowd's trust, the unspoken expectation that he will continue to lead them, to be the voice they've long been denied. He stands firm, a symbol of their shared struggle and hope. In that moment, Isaac realizes that this is more than just a confrontation. It's the start of something bigger, a movement, a demand for respect and justice that cannot be ignored. He glances around, meeting the eyes of the people who have gathered, and he knows that they're ready to fight alongside him. This isn't just his fight, it's theirs too. As the standoff continues, the crowd's energy grows, a silent promise that they won't back down. And for the first time, Isaac sees a glimmer of hope, a spark of resilience that has been ignited within them. He knows the journey ahead will be difficult, filled with challenges and obstacles. But in this moment, surrounded by his community, he feels a surge of determination. They are ready, and so is he. The tension in the park remains as thick as ever, the crowd caught between Isaac's steady resolve and Officer Brian Roberts' unyielding demands. The people are clustered tightly, watching, waiting to see how the situation will unfold. Uncertain murmurs ripple through the crowd, each voice adding to the growing defiance, each glance strengthening their shared determination. The standoff feels like a fuse waiting to ignite. Among the crowd stands Eva Thompson, a young Latina reporter with the sharp instincts of a seasoned journalist. She had come to the park initially to observe the community meeting, hoping to find a story on local advocacy. But as soon as Officer Brian Roberts arrived, she knew this was something much bigger, a confrontation that could expose deep-seated issues within the city's police force. Eva quietly raises her camera, zooming in on Isaac's face, capturing the resolve in his eyes, then pans to Brian, noting his cold, unyielding expression. Every action, every word exchanged, has the potential to reveal the deeper story. Eva's heart pounds with the significance of the moment, realizing that this is a chance to finally bring attention to the issues she's been trying to expose for years. As Eva focuses on the scene unfolding in front of her, she doesn't notice the woman standing off to the side, watching the confrontation from a distance. Rachel Woods, a white detective in plainclothes, is careful not to draw attention to herself. She stands half hidden behind a tree, her face betraying a mixture of worry and frustration. As a detective in the same police department, Rachel knows Officer Brian's reputation well. He's infamous among his colleagues for his hardline approach, a figure who seems almost untouchable within the ranks. Rachel has heard the complaints, the whispers of misconduct, but she's never been in a position to act. Today, however, Rachel's perspective shifts. Watching Brian assert his authority over the crowd with barely concealed contempt, she feels a pang of guilt. These people are her neighbors. She's seen them around town, heard snippets of their lives as they talk in cafes and on street corners. Yet here she is, a silent observer, caught between her duty to the department and her growing disgust at Brian's behavior. The crowd's energy intensifies as Brian steps closer to Isaac, his voice rising, barking commands to disperse. Jamal, the young man who had voiced his anger earlier, shifts uncomfortably, his fists clenching and unclenching as he watches Brian approach Isaac. Eva captures Jamal's tension on camera, noting the way he seems ready to leap into action. She understands his anger. It's the kind of frustration that comes from years of feeling disregarded, silenced. Isaac senses the crowd's agitation and raises a calming hand, speaking in a firm but measured tone. Officer Roberts, we're exercising our right to gather peacefully. We are within our rights and we won't be intimidated. A few people in the crowd cheer softly, emboldened by Isaac's calm defiance. Rachel's eyes flicker with admiration as she watches Isaac maintain control over the crowd. She recognizes the courage it takes to stand up in the face of such hostility. It's a quality she rarely sees in her line of work, and it stirs something in her, a quiet hope that maybe change is possible, even if she's not sure what her role in that change will be. But Brian isn't listening. His hand moves to his radio, as if considering calling for backup. The crowd notices this, and an anxious murmur sweeps through them, Jamal's posture grows even tenser, his gaze locked onto Brian as if daring him to make the first move. Ava, sensing the escalation, steps slightly closer to the action, keeping her camera trained on Brian, capturing every gesture, every hint of aggression. Then, as if sensing a moment of opportunity, Rachel steps forward, positioning herself close enough to observe without drawing too much attention. She pulls out her phone, appearing to check it casually, but in reality, she's recording the scene, each second of tension captured in case it's needed later. She knows it's risky. If anyone in the department finds out, she could face serious repercussions, but her conscience won't let her stand idly by. Their eyes meet across the crowd, Eva and Rachel exchanging a brief but intense look of understanding. Eva recognizes Rachel as a detective, and Rachel can see the determination in Eva's expression, the silent promise to get the truth out. There's a silent exchange of purpose, a mutual acknowledgement that they're both here for more than just passive observation. The tension between Brian and the crowd escalates as Brian finally speaks into his radio, calling for additional units. The crowd tenses, many clutching their phones tightly as they continue to record. Jamal mutters something under his breath, and a few others nearby echo his sentiment, their anger simmering just beneath the surface. Eva notices the moment and captures it on camera, aware of how easily this situation could spiral out of control. She takes a step closer to Rachel, deciding to seize the moment. "You're with the police, aren't you?" she whispers, keeping her voice low so as not to attract attention. Rachel glances at Eva, her eyes flashing with a mixture of caution and resolve. "Yes," she replies quietly, "but not all of us are like him." She nods subtly toward Brian, her disdain clear. Eva raises an eyebrow, intrigued. "I take it you know him?" Rachel hesitates, choosing her words carefully. "Let's just say he's got a history, a pattern that's been ignored for too long." Her gaze hardens as she looks back at Brian. "He's not the only one either. It's a problem that runs deep." Eva's mind races. She realizes that Rachel might be a valuable source, someone who could provide the insight she needs to dig deeper. "I want to understand what's happening here. People need to know the truth about officers like him." Rachel nods, her voice a low whisper. "Be careful. They don't like people looking too closely." She hesitates, then adds, "But if you're serious, there might be things I can tell you. Things that the public should know." Before Eva can respond, a loud voice cuts through the crowd. Brian's backup has arrived, and 2 additional officers step into the scene, their presence adding another layer of tension. The crowd grows even more agitated, voices rising in protest, challenging the officer's authority. Brian's backup stands alongside him, their expressions unreadable, but their stance makes it clear they're here to reinforce his command. Isaac takes a deep breath, feeling the weight of his responsibility to the community. He knows that if he doesn't maintain control, things could escalate quickly. He glances around, meeting the eyes of the people who have come to support him, each face reflecting a mixture of fear and defiance. "Everyone, please stay calm," Isaac calls out, his voice carrying over the murmurs. "We're here to make a stand, but we won't give them a reason to accuse us of violence." Rachel watches Isaac with a sense of admiration, noting his calm yet powerful presence. She can feel the crowd's loyalty to him, their willingness to stand by him even as the situation grows more dangerous. It's the kind of leadership that feels foreign to her world, a world where power often overshadows principles. Yet she's drawn to Isaac's resilience, to the way he refuses to let anger cloud his purpose. As the crowd remains firm, Brian's frustration mounts. He takes a step closer to Isaac, his eyes narrowing. "You're responsible for this," he growls, his voice barely contained. "If things get out of hand, it'll be on you." Isaac meets his gaze without flinching. "I'm responsible for standing up for what's right," he replies, his voice steady. "If you choose to escalate this, that will be on you." The crowd murmurs in support, their collective resolve growing stronger. Eva captures the moment on camera, her heart pounding as she realizes the significance of Isaac's words. This isn't just about one gathering or one protest. It's about a community reclaiming its voice, demanding respect and justice. As Rachel quietly steps back into the shadows, she knows she's reached a turning point. She can no longer remain a passive observer in a system that's so clearly flawed. The seeds of change have been planted within her, a silent commitment to help Isaac and his community, even if it means risking her own position. In the intensity of the moment, Eva and Rachel exchange one last look, a silent understanding that they're both part of something larger than themselves. They know that the fight isn't over, that if anything, it's only just begun. And as the scene in the park reaches a fever pitch, the eyes of everyone present are on Isaac, waiting to see what will happen next, trusting him to guide them through the storm. Brian's presence looms over the crowd, his expression hardened and unyielding as he barks commands for them to disperse. His backup officers stand by his side, their faces rigid as they scan the crowd, hands hovering near their belts, ready to assert control if things get out of hand. But the people don't move. They hold their ground, standing firm with Isaac at the center, their defiance quiet but powerful. Among them is Jamal, whose earlier frustration has only grown with Brian's persistence. His face is taut with anger, his fists clenched tightly at his sides as he watches Brian with barely restrained rage. Jamal feels every dismissive word, every arrogant command as a personal attack, not just on him, but on his family, his neighbors, his community. He can't take it any longer. "This is enough," he yells, his voice echoing through the park. "We're not going anywhere. They can't keep treating us like this." A murmur of agreement spreads through the crowd, voices rising in support of Jamal. Some people clap, others raise their fists, and for a moment it seems as though his anger might ignite a full-blown confrontation. The crowd is charged, the air thick with years of pent-up frustration finally bubbling to the surface. Just as the tension seems about to erupt, Martha Lynn steps forward. An older woman of Asian descent and the owner of a small store just blocks away, Martha is a familiar figure in the neighborhood, respected for her resilience and quiet strength. She walks up to Isaac and Jamal, placing a gentle hand on Jamal's shoulder. Hold on, Jamal," she says softly, her voice firm but comforting. "Remember, we're here to make a point, not to give them an excuse to turn us into the villains." Jamal hesitates, his fists slowly unclenching as he meets Martha's steady gaze. He respects her. Everyone in the neighborhood does. She's the one who stood by her community through hard times, who kept her doors open even when business was tough. Her words carry weight. Martha then turns to face the crowd, raising her voice so everyone can hear. "We can't let fear or anger control us. This isn't just about Isaac. This is about all of us, our families, our children. We deserve to be heard and we deserve respect. Let's stand together, but let's do it peacefully." Her words wash over the crowd, calming them, grounding them. Isaac steps up beside her, his presence radiating strength and determination. He raises his voice, his tone clear and commanding, but with an unmistakable warmth. "Martha's right," he says, addressing the crowd. "This isn't just my fight, it's our fight. We all deserve to live in a community where we feel safe, where we're respected, where we don't have to fear those who are supposed to protect us. But we can't lose sight of who we are. We're better than violence. We're stronger than fear. We're here to demand respect, and we'll do it by standing together, peacefully." The crowd listens intently, the tension gradually easing. Isaac's words resonate deeply, touching a nerve within each person present. They see in him a leader, someone willing to stand up not only for himself, but for them, for everyone who's been mistreated, overlooked, or silenced. The shared sense of purpose grows, a feeling that they are no longer just individuals but a united front, a community determined to make a difference. Brian watches all of this unfold, his jaw clenched tightly. He's accustomed to having the final word, to seeing people scatter at his commands. But here, in the face of Isaac's quiet strength and the community's unwavering unity, he feels a pang of doubt. His authority, which has always felt so absolute, seems to falter. The crowd's murmurs grow louder, a wave of support building as more people raise their voices, calling out for justice, for accountability. Some of them begin to question why the police have responded so aggressively to a peaceful gathering. Others voice their concerns about their safety, knowing that any wrong move could turn the situation volatile. But Isaac's presence keeps them grounded, his steady resolve a reminder that they don't have to give in to fear. Finally, feeling the pressure of the crowd's collective strength, Brian takes a reluctant step back. He glares at Isaac, his expression one of barely concealed resentment, but he knows he's been outmatched. This isn't a battle he can win. Not here, not now. Fine, Brian mutters, his tone bitter. You can have your little meeting, but don't think this is over. We'll be watching you. With that, he signals to his fellow officers, who follow his lead, each of them casting a final, distrustful glance at the crowd before retreating. The air remains tense, a lingering reminder of the confrontation, but there's a new feeling within the crowd, a fragile but undeniable sense of victory. As the officers leave, a quiet murmur of relief ripples through the people. Isaac turns to the crowd, a small but triumphant smile on his face. He can see it in their eyes, the spark of hope that had been missing for so long. This moment, this small act of defiance, has shown them that they have power, that they don't have to live in fear. Isaac nods, his gaze sweeping across the faces of those who have gathered. This isn't the end, he says, his voice filled with conviction. Today we took a stand. We showed them that we're here, that we're not afraid to demand respect. But there's a lot of work ahead of us. If we want real change, we have to be ready to keep fighting. The crowd responds with applause, some people cheering, others nodding in agreement. Martha stands beside Isaac, her expression one of pride and determination. She reaches out, giving his arm a reassuring squeeze. We're with you, Isaac, she says firmly. We're all with you. Jamal, who had simmered with anger just moments before, now looks at Isaac with newfound respect. I didn't think we'd actually make them back down, he admits, his voice laced with disbelief and admiration. Isaac smiles at him. That's the power of standing together, Jamal. When we're united, they can't ignore us. Martha steps forward again, addressing the crowd. If we want to keep this momentum going, we need to stay organized. We need a plan, a way to make sure our voices are heard. I'm opening up my store tomorrow night. Anyone who wants to help, who has ideas for what we can do next, you're welcome to come. The crowd murmurs in agreement, their commitment to the cause solidifying. People exchange glances, sharing nods of encouragement, of determination. They've crossed a threshold and there's no going back. This isn't just a moment, it's the beginning of a movement. As the crowd begins to disperse, Isaac takes a moment to stand alone, watching as people walk away, talking in groups, their spirits lifted. He can feel the energy, the shared resolve, and he knows that this is only the start. There will be challenges, opposition from those who benefit from the status quo, but today has proven that they have the power to push back. Eva Thompson, who has been documenting the entire encounter, catches Isaac's eye as she lowers her camera. She gives him a nod, an unspoken promise that she will tell this story, that she will be part of their fight. Isaac nods back, grateful for her presence, for the way she has captured a truth that can no longer be ignored. From a distance, Rachel watches as well, her heart heavy with a mixture of admiration and apprehension. She's seen Isaac's strength, witnessed the crowd's unity, and felt a pull to be part of it all. But as a detective bound to her role, she knows the cost of aligning openly with their cause. Still, the experience has left its mark, planting a seed of doubt about her role within the system, a seed that she knows will grow in time. As Isaac walks home, he feels a profound sense of purpose, a certainty that his community is ready for change. This moment, this gathering in the park, has sparked something that cannot be extinguished. He knows the road ahead will be difficult, but he also knows that he is not alone. And so, with a renewed spirit, Isaac prepares for the battles yet to come, ready to lead his community in a movement that demands justice, respect, and a brighter future for everyone. By the next morning, the video of the confrontation in the park is everywhere. Eva Thompson uploaded her footage late the previous night, and within hours it has spread like wildfire across social media, news outlets, and community forums. Her footage captures every charged moment, Brian's harsh commands, Isaac's calm defiance, the crowd's shared tension, and the silent but unyielding stand of the people who refuse to be silenced. The city is captivated, and discussions quickly erupt, not just about the confrontation itself, but about the underlying issues it brings to light. In households and coffee shops, people talk about the police's treatment of the community, Comments pour in from people across the city and beyond, many expressing shock, others anger, and some, perhaps the most surprising to Isaac, a sense of hope that this incident might finally ignite change. For Isaac, the aftermath is both overwhelming and heartening. His phone buzzes constantly with calls and messages from friends, strangers, and journalists seeking comment. But amid the clamor, he remains focused, aware that the moment demands action, not just words. He knows he needs allies, people with insight into the system, to navigate the path forward. And he knows exactly where to start. Later that day, Isaac meets Rachel Woods in a quiet cafe on the outskirts of the neighborhood. Rachel, dressed inconspicuously in a hoodie and jeans, looks around nervously before sliding into the booth across from him. It's a clandestine meeting, and the stakes are high. If anyone in the department finds out, Rachel's career could be on the line. But the events at the park have solidified her decision. She can't stay silent anymore. "Thank you for coming," Isaac says, his voice warm but serious. Rachel nods, her gaze steady. "Thank you for standing up back there. I've never seen anyone handle him like that," she replies, referring to Brian. Her words carry a weight of unspoken frustration, a hint at her own struggles within the department. Isaac wastes no time. "Rachel, I need your help. I know what happened yesterday was just the tip of the iceberg. People have been telling me for years about officers like Brian, but they're scared to come forward. I need proof, something solid to show the city that this isn't an isolated incident." Rachel looks down, conflicted. She's spent years accumulating knowledge, seeing the patterns, understanding the systemic flaws. But giving Isaac access to that knowledge means crossing a line she's never dared cross. Finally, she meets his gaze. "I can get you records, complaints, disciplinary files, incident reports, things that were buried or dismissed." She hesitates, then adds, "But you'll need to be careful. Once this gets out, the department won't just sit back. They'll fight this." Isaac nods, his face resolute. "I understand the risks, Rachel, but if we don't act now, it'll only get worse. People are watching, and we have a chance to make real change." They spend the next hour laying out a plan. Rachel agrees to provide him with records, carefully selected documents that show a pattern of misconduct, not just by Brian, but by several other officers who have operated with impunity. They also discuss ways to protect Rachel's identity. Her involvement is essential, but they can't afford to lose her as a source within the department. By the time they part, they've forged an alliance based on mutual trust and a shared commitment to justice. Isaac feels a renewed sense of purpose as he heads back to the neighborhood. He knows that the path ahead will be dangerous, but with Rachel's help, he has the evidence he needs to build a case against the police department. That evening, Martha Lynn hosts a community meeting at her store. Her shop, a modest but welcoming space, is filled to capacity as people crowd in, standing shoulder to shoulder, many faces alight with a new sense of purpose. Martha's presence is a steadying force. Her calm and resilient demeanor has always been a source of comfort to the community, and tonight it is clear that she's become an invaluable leader in the movement. Martha stands at the front, her voice calm but firm as she welcomes everyone and invites them to share their thoughts. "We're here tonight because what happened at the park was wrong, and we all know it. But if we want things to change, we need to come together, to make our voices heard, and to make sure this isn't just forgotten like so many other incidents." One by one, people begin to speak. Some share stories of their own experiences with the police, moments of disrespect, intimidation, and prejudice that they've carried in silence for years. Others express their anger, their exhaustion at feeling like second-class citizens in their own neighborhood. But amid the anger, there is also a sense of solidarity, a growing realization that together they can be a force for change. Jamal is there, and when it's his turn to speak, his voice trembles with emotion. "I've spent my whole life watching people get pushed around, being told to stay quiet, to not make trouble. But seeing Isaac stand up like that, it showed me we don't have to stay silent. We don't have to take it. We're stronger than they think." The crowd murmurs in agreement, a collective acknowledgement of Jamal's words. Isaac stands near the back, listening intently, humbled by the strength and resilience of his neighbors. He can feel the momentum building, the sense of purpose spreading through the room like a fire. As the meeting continues, they discuss practical steps forward. Martha suggests organizing a petition to demand a full investigation into the police department's practices, a call to hold officers like Brian accountable for their actions. Others propose organizing a peaceful march through the city, a visible show of unity and determination. Eva, who's present as both an observer and a supporter, speaks up, offering her platform as a journalist to bring attention to the movement. "I have footage, and I have a voice in the media. I'll make sure your stories are heard. The city can't ignore us if we speak out together." Isaac watches as his community comes alive with ideas, each voice adding to the growing chorus of resistance. He realizes that this movement has become much bigger than just him. It's a collective effort, a shared commitment to justice that has taken root in the hearts of the people. But even as they plan, Isaac knows the opposition is preparing. The police department won't take this lying down, and he's well aware that the city council has powerful members who are sympathetic to the department. Some of the more conservative council members have already begun to push back subtly, planting seeds of doubt, spreading rumors that Isaac is a radical, an agitator stirring up trouble for personal gain. It's a tactic as old as time, but Isaac knows it could sway public opinion if they're not careful. Over the next few days, the police department ramps up its response. Officers begin patrolling the neighborhood more frequently, their presence heavy and menacing. People notice the change, the way patrol cars linger on street corners, the way officers watch with thinly veiled suspicion. It's a clear message. The department is watching, and they won't tolerate dissent. Isaac receives a call from one of the conservative council members, a man named Edward Chase. Edward's voice is cold, laced with veiled threats. "Isaac, I've heard about your activities. I'd advise you to be careful. Stirring up division doesn't help anyone." Isaac holds his ground. "I'm not stirring up division, Edward. I'm standing up for my community. If that's a problem for you, maybe it's time you asked yourself why." Edward's response is icy. "Just remember, you're not the only one with influence in this city." Isaac ends the call, his resolve only strengthened. He knows this fight won't be easy, but the people behind him give him strength. With Rachel's support from inside the department, Eva's media coverage, Martha's leadership, and the community's commitment, Isaac believes they have a real chance to make a difference. Days pass and the movement grows. People across the city are talking about the video, about the stories Eva has begun to publish, each article exposing a new layer of systemic bias within the police force. The petition Martha started circulates rapidly, gaining hundreds of signatures. There's an undeniable momentum building, a groundswell of support that reaches beyond the neighborhood. Yet the resistance is mounting as well. Some city officials and police department heads quietly work to discredit the movement, dismissing it as a radical fringe effort. They plant stories in the media, suggesting that Isaac's motivations are political, that he's using the incident to advance his career. But the community knows the truth, and their resolve only hardens in the face of these attacks. Isaac meets with his closest allies, planning the next steps. They know that the real challenge is yet to come, forcing the city to conduct a formal investigation, one that can't be swept under the rug. It's a daunting task, but Isaac is ready. For the first time in his life, he feels the weight of a community standing with him, a force greater than any single person. As the chapter closes, Isaac stands in the center of his neighborhood, looking out over the streets filled with people he has known his entire life. He feels a deep sense of responsibility, but also a profound hope. This isn't just about one incident, one officer, or one confrontation. It's about changing a system that has oppressed them for far too long. The fight will be long and the path uncertain, but Isaac knows that together they are unstoppable. The spark ignited by Isaac's courage has spread beyond his neighborhood, touching lives across the city. His stand against Brian and the police department's heavy-handed tactics has become a rallying cry, inspiring people from all walks of life to come forward and join the movement. For many, it's the first time they've felt hopeful in years, a glimpse of change that they never believed possible. Isaac's face and name have become synonymous with the fight for justice, but he knows that the movement's strength lies not in any one individual, but in the collective will of the people who stand behind it. Day by day, the movement grows, with support pouring in from every corner of the city. The diverse backgrounds of the supporters, students, parents, business owners, immigrants, and lifelong residents, give the movement a powerful, undeniable legitimacy. Jamal has found himself transformed by the experience. The anger that once consumed him, the frustration of being treated as a perpetual suspect in his own neighborhood, now fuels his commitment to constructive action. He reaches out to young people, organizing meetings in local recreation centers, coffee shops, and even on basketball courts. With his passion and charisma, Jamal encourages others to channel their frustrations into activism. His message is simple but powerful. They don't have to remain silent, and they don't have to resort to violence. Jamal becomes a vital part of the movement's youth outreach, building a network of young people who share his vision for change. They create campaigns on social media, post flyers around the city, and hold workshops to educate others about their rights and how to interact with law enforcement. In a series of weekly meetings, Jamal speaks openly about his experiences, creating a safe space where others can share their own stories without fear of judgment. For the first time, many of these young people feel that they have a voice, that they can be part of something bigger than themselves. Meanwhile, Eva continues her relentless pursuit of the truth. Every article she publishes digs deeper, exposing layers of corruption and negligence within the police department. Her investigative series quickly gains traction, with readers following each installment eagerly, angered by the extent of the systemic issues she uncovers. Eva's reporting shines a light on the cases of countless others who, like Isaac, have been wronged but silenced by fear. She interviews people who have filed complaints only to have them ignored, brushed aside, or lost within the system. Each story builds on the last, painting a picture of a department where accountability is scarce and abuses of power are routine. The impact of Eva's work is felt not only within the community, but also within the police department itself. Officers who had previously dismissed the movement as a passing outrage begin to question their own roles in perpetuating the problems. Rachel Woods, quietly supportive from within the department, watches the effects of Eva's work unfold. Conversations that once seemed unthinkable begin to surface in the precinct. Whispers among officers who are reconsidering what it means to truly serve and protect. Rachel has been instrumental in providing Eva with insights, carefully selected documents, and leads that strengthen Eva's investigations. She's discreet, mindful of the risks, but each piece of information she shares feels like a small act of defiance against the status quo. Though she can't openly join the movement, Rachel has become an unseen ally, working from within to challenge the toxic culture of her department. But even as the movement grows, the obstacles remain significant. The police department, feeling the pressure from the community's demands, ramps up its resistance. Officers patrol the neighborhood more frequently, their presence an unspoken reminder that they are still in control. Conservative voices on the city council, some with ties to the department, dismiss the movement as anti-police and accuse Isaac of inciting division. But Isaac remains undeterred. He knows these attacks are attempts to weaken their resolve, to force them into silence. Instead of backing down, he and his allies double down on their commitment to push forward. In the midst of all this, the community holds another meeting, this time in a larger venue to accommodate the increasing number of people eager to be involved. Isaac stands at the front, flanked by Jamal, Martha, Eva, and other core members of the movement. As he addresses the crowd, his voice is filled with a mixture of gratitude and determination. "Thank you all for being here," he begins, his gaze moving across the room, taking in the faces of the people who have supported him from the beginning and those who have recently joined. "We've come a long way since that day in the park, but our work is just beginning. Real change takes time, and it takes all of us working together. We're here because we believe in a future where everyone is treated with respect and dignity, no matter who they are or where they come from." The crowd erupts in applause, the energy in the room palpable. Isaac takes a moment to let their response settle before continuing. "We know that some people want to stop us. They'll call us troublemakers. They'll say we're anti-police. But this isn't about being against anyone. This is about being for justice, for accountability, for the safety and well-being of every single person in our community." Martha steps forward, her voice calm but resolute. We can't afford to lose momentum. Every one of us here has a role to play. Whether it's signing petitions, attending meetings, or simply talking to our neighbors, we all have the power to make a difference. The meeting becomes a brainstorming session with residents sharing their ideas and strategies. They discuss organizing a march, creating educational workshops, and setting up a legal fund to support those who come forward with complaints. The unity in the room is undeniable, and as people volunteer their skills and resources, a sense of optimism fills the air. Later, Isaac speaks privately with Jamal and Martha, discussing how to keep the movement organized as it continues to grow. Jamal's work with the youth has been especially effective, and they discuss expanding his outreach efforts, perhaps even forming a youth council to give the younger generation a formal platform within the movement. They know that involving young people is crucial. They are the future, and their voices are essential to creating lasting change. As the meeting concludes, Eva approaches Isaac, a thoughtful look on her face. "I have another article coming out soon," she says. "It's going to dig even deeper into the department's record. I want you to know that I'm with you all the way." Isaac smiles, deeply appreciative of her dedication. "Thank you, Eva. You've given this movement a voice that reaches beyond our neighborhood. People are listening, and that's because of you." Rachel, who has been watching from the back of the room, feels a quiet sense of pride. She's not ready to openly align herself with the movement, but her heart is with them, and she knows she'll do whatever she can to support them from the shadows. She nods subtly to Isaac before slipping out, her silent acknowledgement of their shared cause. In the days that follow, the city becomes increasingly aware of the movement's strength. Local news stations begin covering the protests and publishing Eva's articles, while support pours in from neighboring communities. People who have experienced their own injustices feel empowered to speak up, to join the movement, and to demand better treatment. However, as the movement gains visibility, so does the pushback. Certain city officials, including Edward Chase, continue their attempts to discredit Isaac, questioning his motives and accusing him of using the movement for personal gain. But Isaac remains undeterred. With every attempt to discredit him, his resolve grows stronger, and his support only solidifies. The community holds another rally, drawing people from across the city. Jamal speaks to the crowd, his voice filled with passion as he shares his journey from anger to activism. "I used to think there was no point in fighting back," he tells them, "but I was wrong. We can't just sit back and hope things get better. We have to make them better." The crowd cheers, their enthusiasm infectious. Isaac steps forward, raising his voice to address the crowd. "This is our city, our community. We have the right to be treated with respect, to be heard, and to feel safe in our own streets. And we're not going to stop until those rights are recognized." As the rally concludes, Isaac feels a profound sense of pride and hope. The movement has taken on a life of its own, growing stronger with each passing day. It's no longer just his fight. It belongs to everyone who has ever been mistreated, everyone who has ever felt invisible or powerless. As he looks out over the crowd, Isaac knows that they've reached a turning point. They're not just a group of people united by anger. They are a force for change, a movement with the power to reshape their city. And though he knows the path ahead will be difficult, he is more certain than ever that they are on the right track. The day of the press conference arrives with a palpable sense of anticipation. Word has spread throughout the city, and people begin to gather early, crowding the steps of City Hall and spilling into the surrounding streets. Residents from all walks of life show up in solidarity, standing shoulder to shoulder, ready to hear from the man who has become a symbol of hope and resilience. Isaac feels the weight of the moment as he arrives, his gaze sweeping over the hundreds of faces that have come to support him. There are families with young children, elderly couples holding hands, students with handmade signs, and neighbors who've experienced the injustices firsthand. The sight fills him with a mixture of pride and humility. He knows that today's message isn't just his. It belongs to every person who has been impacted, everyone who believes in a better future for their community. A swarm of media outlets has gathered, cameras trained on the podium set up at the top of the City Hall steps. Journalists from local and national networks jostle for position, microphones and notepads at the ready. aware that today's event has the potential to reach far beyond the borders of their city. This isn't just a story about one community. It's a story about the power of ordinary people standing up against systemic oppression, a story that resonates with millions. Beside Isaac stands his core group of allies: Martha, steadfast and calm; Jamal, filled with a fiery determination; Eva, who has chronicled the movement with integrity and passion; and Rachel, whose discreet support from within the police department has helped expose the issues they are fighting to change. They exchange silent glances of encouragement, each knowing that this moment has been a long time coming. Isaac steps up to the podium, the crowd falling silent as they wait for him to speak. His voice is steady as he begins, addressing the crowd and the cameras with conviction. "Today, we're not here as just individuals," he says, his gaze sweeping over the crowd. "We're here as a community, a collective voice demanding justice, accountability, and respect. For far too long, we've been treated as if our voices don't matter, as if our lives don't matter. But we're here to say, loud and clear, that we will not be ignored any longer." A wave of applause and cheers ripples through the crowd, their voices rising in agreement. Isaac pauses, allowing the sound to settle before he continues. "Some will say that this movement is anti-police or that we're trying to create division. But this is not about being against anyone. It's about standing up for the rights and dignity of every person in this city. We're calling for reform because we believe in justice, because we believe that law enforcement should serve and protect us, not instill fear in our communities." He takes a deep breath, his voice growing more impassioned. "The truth is that the issues we face go far beyond any one officer or incident. This is about a system that has allowed abuse to go unchecked, a system that has marginalized our communities and treated us as less than worthy of respect. We are here to demand that our city officials, our leaders, and our institutions commit to meaningful change." Isaac glances over at Rachel, a silent acknowledgement of her contribution to this moment. With her help, he's gathered records and testimonials, proof of the systemic issues they're fighting. Today, he holds the evidence in his hands, a file filled with the complaints and reports that have long been ignored, swept under the rug to protect the department's image. He raises the file for all to see. "In my hands, I hold records that tell the story of a system that has failed us. Complaints filed and ignored, officers disciplined only in name, and a culture that protects its own at the expense of the very people it's meant to serve. This file represents the voices of countless individuals who have suffered in silence. And today, we bring their stories to light." The crowd erupts, their cheers echoing off the walls of City Hall. People raise their fists in solidarity, some with tears in their eyes as they recognize that their stories, their experiences, are finally being acknowledged. For many, this is a moment they never thought they'd see, a public declaration that their pain has not gone unnoticed. As the noise settles, Isaac leans forward, his voice filled with unwavering resolve. Never stay silent in the face of injustice. Fighting back isn't just an individual duty, it's the responsibility of an entire community. Each of us has a role to play, a voice to use, and together we are unstoppable. His words resonate deeply, and they quickly become the motto of the movement. The crowd chants the phrase back to him, their voices merging into a powerful, unified call for justice. Journalists scribble furiously, capturing the message that has come to define the movement, while photographers snap pictures of the crowd, their faces a blend of hope, pride, and determination. But as the crowd continues to cheer, Isaac knows that the road ahead remains uncertain. This press conference is just one step, a public declaration that shines a light on the issues they face. The real work, changing policies, challenging deeply ingrained biases, and holding those in power accountable, is still to come. After the press conference, Isaac and his allies gather in a small office space they've been using as a makeshift headquarters. The room is buzzing with energy, each person filled with a sense of purpose and possibility. They discuss the next steps, outlining plans to pressure the city council to implement an independent review board for police misconduct, to introduce community-led training for officers, and to push for policies that prioritize transparency and accountability. Jamal volunteers to organize another rally, this time aimed at City Hall, to keep the pressure on. We need to show them that we're not going away, he says, his voice fierce with determination. This isn't just a one-time event. We're here to stay. Martha agrees, her tone calm but resolute. If we want them to listen, we have to keep showing up. We have to keep reminding them that we're watching. Eva, still documenting every step of the movement, speaks up. I'll keep publishing stories, digging deeper. We have to make sure that people outside our community see what's happening, that they know this isn't just a local issue, it's a national one. Rachel, standing quietly in the back of the room, catches Isaac's eye. She nods, a silent promise that she'll continue to help from within the department, even as the pressure builds. She knows that her position is precarious, but she's come too far to turn back now. The fight for justice has become personal, and she's ready to do whatever it takes to support the movement. The weeks that follow are filled with both progress and setbacks. The movement gains support from neighboring communities, with people inspired by Isaac's words and the courage of those who stand beside him. Other cities begin organizing their own rallies, drawing attention to similar issues in their police departments. Isaac's declaration has ignited a fire that spreads, touching communities across the nation, each one galvanized by the promise of change. But the pushback from the city and the police department is fierce. Some officials try to block the independent review board, arguing that it undermines law enforcement. The police union releases statements accusing Isaac of inciting hostility toward officers, while conservative media outlets label the movement as anti-police. Isaac knows these are tactics meant to weaken their resolve, to divide them. But he remains steadfast, rallying his supporters and reminding them of their shared purpose. One evening, as Isaac walks through his neighborhood, he notices the subtle changes that have begun to take root. He sees people greeting each other with nods of solidarity, a quiet acknowledgement of their shared commitment. He sees young people talking openly about civil rights, discussing ways to continue the fight for justice. There's a new energy in the air, a sense of empowerment that has permeated the community. At a final rally organized to mark the one-month anniversary of the press conference, Isaac stands before a crowd that has only grown larger and more diverse. He looks out at the faces of those who have stood by him from the beginning and those who have recently joined the fight. He feels a profound sense of gratitude, knowing that this movement has become something much bigger than he ever imagined. Together, we've come so far, he says, his voice filled with emotion. But our journey is just beginning. We may face challenges, and there will be those who try to silence us, to break us. But as long as we stand together, as long as we keep fighting, they will never succeed. The crowd roars in agreement, their voices filled with the strength of a people who know their worth, who refuse to be silenced. Isaac's declaration, made weeks ago on the steps of City Hall, has become their rallying cry, a reminder that they are powerful, that they have a voice, and that they are no longer alone. As the rally ends and people begin to disperse, Isaac stands in quiet reflection, watching as families, friends, and strangers walk away, their faces illuminated by a sense of purpose. The battle for justice will be long, but he knows they are ready, that they are capable of transforming not only their city, but perhaps inspiring change far beyond it. In that moment, as Isaac looks out over the crowd, he feels a palpable hope spread across the city, a hope that, in time, will grow into the world they have all been fighting for.